Hello. Today we're going to be making this card, and it's a 5x7 card, and it has lots of texture and die cuts on it, and the colors are greens and granite gray with some white, and I'll show you how we get this process started. So you're going to start with a piece of 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 Whisper White, or the new white from Stampin' Up. And I've stamped it in both corners with a stamp, word stamp, with gray granite. And I've let it dry. And the next step to get some color on the background is I'm going to use this stamp, which is a kind of a swash of watercolor. You don't have to use a stamp to do this. It's just an easier process. You can take a watercolor brush and I've tested it here, so it will get the same. You'll get the same effect if you use a watercolor brush. You just have to let it dry. This is still damp. This is just a sample. But it works the same way, and you'll see that as we go through the process. So I'm going to take Granny Apple Green, and I'm going to just stamp over the front of the card. And I'm going to kind of go in a back and forth motion. Let's see. Here. Maybe I'll go down here. Okay, so about 3. And you can do big swashes where I did small ones here. This is a smaller card. It doesn't matter. But bigger, it gets done quicker. So we'll do 3 of those in Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to do 3 in Garden Green. So let me clean off my stamp really quick. I'm going to mix those colors. So, okay. I'm going to take the Garden Green and go in between, whoops, the other green. Okay, and it's okay if you go off the edge a little bit at the bottom. So just want to get some green in the background there. As a matter of fact, I might put a little bit more over here, a little more here. Just swishes. It doesn't have to be perfect in any way. So just as long as you get some color on there. And cleaned my stamp. I'm going to do one more little splash up here. Maybe another one here. So you just want to get some green on the background like that. And like I said, using a paintbrush is fine. With ink, you can put ink in your palette, and just not a whole lot of water, but for a drop of, or 2 drops of ink, I would put 1 drop of water and see if you can work with that. So that's just a suggestion for diluting it so that you can get it to spread. Okay, so that's how I started. Then the next thing I did was I put a whitewash over this. So you can use any kind of acrylic paint. You can get acrylic paint anywhere. This is white, and you can get it in a tube, or you can get it in a I want to call it a jar, but it's not a jar. But you know what I mean. So I've got a little bit of water on my brush, and I really don't want too much, so I'm going to get a paper towel and kind of dab it a little bit. You want to take your acrylic paint full strength, basically. Swirl it around. And then you're just going to paint back and forth over these greens. Now, I should have let them dry a little bit more, but the green will spread a little bit. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just a fun process of swirling some white over this to mute the green a little. Okay, so then you would set this aside to dry. Okay, so once it's dry, you would take some gray granite ink. Clean my palette. You would take some gray granite ink and put it on your palette. Now remember, you have to let this dry first, so I'm not going to do very much of this since this is a test. I'm going to use one that I've already completed. So you've got your gray granite on there, and you're just going to make splotches, basically, of gray granite here and there. So just coloring it around. Just kind of making no particular pattern or anything. You just want to get some gray granite on there. You want to have fun with this process, so it sort of looks like modern art there. Okay, so that is the process of getting that on there. And then you want to set it aside to dry again. So once it's dry, you want to take some white. Well, first, let's do the gray granite. So I'm going to put another drop on here. And I'm going to flick paint all over the front of it. So let me move my water. And I'm going to bring in, this is going to darken a little bit. I'm going to bring in my splatter tray. Here, it's a box. I'm going to put it so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. And I'm going to take my palette with my drop of ink, and I'm going to take a paintbrush. This is a stiff brush. It's just an inexpensive 1/2 inch flat stiff brush. And I'm going to dip it in some water. I'm going to mix it with the ink. And actually, I'm going to put another drop of ink on there because I want it darker than that. So I know I'm off camera here, but okay. So there's the gray granite. Okay, so I'm going to take this ink and flick it. That was a bit more than I wanted, but I'm just going to flick it onto the paper. Okay, so now I have some splatter. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing with white, but of course you want that to dry. So I don't want to take the time to get out the heat tool and dry this. So I'm just going to move on now to the one that I've already completed. And that's this one. Okay, so you can see that I have flicked on some of the white, frost white ink, paint, that's ink, and it gives it kind of a glittery background. Okay, same process as I used with the gray granite. And you can use a toothbrush if you prefer that form of splatter. That's what I did on this one, but actually I like the splatter brush that I did. I like this one better. So if it was dry, I would be using it on this one. Okay, so I'm going to set that one aside to dry, and we'll proceed with this one since it's already dry. I did this earlier today. So I want to quickly show you what we need to do to, while you're have that set aside to dry, I'll show you how you proceed with preparing your different die cuts to put on the front of the card. Okay, so you have these leaves, and they of course need some ink on them to make them a little brighter. I'm going to pull in a piece of plastic here. I find that the ink spreads a little smoother if you have a mat underneath them. Okay, so we're going to take the Granny Apple Green and a sponge. I have a sponge here with Granny Apple Green on it. You know this is. Okay, so I'm going to just sponge it up, and I'm just going to wipe the paint on the tips of the leaves. You really don't need to go all the way down because you're probably going to cut off the stems anyway when you start sticking them in. So just the tips, just to darken them a little bit. And this is Granny Apple Green cardstock with Granny Apple Green ink and just a sponge. That's all you need. Okay? Okay, so that is the Granny Apple Green and the leaves, the long leaves. Okay, these have all been stamped in Granny Apple Green and die cut. So we have those. We have 3 of the feathers in soft suede. I have a butterfly that has been stamped and heat set with marcasite, if I'm saying it correctly. And it's a sparkly, don't know if you can see it, it's kind of a sparkly gray, silvery color. And we have some die cuts here that we are leaving white. There's another one of those leaves. We have these leaves. I've already sponged over this one, so I'm going to get that Granny Apple Green again and my sponge, and I'm going to go over this one. And you know what? I don't think it was Granny Apple Green. I think it's... well, maybe it is. Well, or Garden Green. I have my Granny Apple Green out, so that's what I'm going to use. It just looks really light to me. And you know what? I think it is Garden Green, so I'm going to switch. I'm just going to clean off my sponge. You know that you don't need a sponge for every color. Excuse me while I just go over to a piece of scratch paper and I am just rubbing off the ink. And I'm going to get the Garden Green and see if that's a darker color. Yes, that's more like it. Okay, so my leaves will not be the same color. Let me get another leaf. Sorry about that. Trying to be as close to the other card as I can. Okay, so this is Garden Green again, a darker green. Kind of go around the edges so that you get the edges nice and dark. Okay, and it doesn't have to be completely done. So, okay, so it's going to look like that. And you're really going to get inky fingers doing this. Okay, so there we have those 2 leaves. And now I'll show you these little die cuts that I have painted. And I'll show you the process for this. It's very simple. I've done these in advance so that we're not taking a lot of time to do that. But this also calls for the frost white ink. I'm going to use my stylus to paint these. So you all have a stylus on hand usually. I'm just going to take the lid. I'm going to dip the stylus in the ink, and it gets on the tip like that. And then I'm just going to dot the tips of these leaves. Just like that. Okay? And dip it in water. I'm going to clean it off with a paper towel. And it's good as new. Okay? So that's how I painted the tips of those. They sort of look like pussy willows or something like that. Let me set this one aside so I know it's the wet one. Then I have some flowers. So I have 5 of the large and 5 of the small. And in the center of these flowers, I've simply taken the gray granite blends in lighter dark. Oh, here it is. Either light or dark gray granite, and color the centers. I just put a little dot of ink on each one so that they're colored in the center. Okay, so basically the card is green and brown, the gray granite, and white. Okay, so here's our card base. Once again, it's 5.5 by 7 card. And the first thing we're going to do is take our dry piece. This one's not quite dry yet, so I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. And you're just going to glue it to the front. I'm going to get out my trusty glue. And be generous with the glue, but don't over wet the back of the paper because you don't want it to stay wet. You want it to be completely dry. You can see here that this is not completely dry right in that one spot. Okay, but we want this to stick down flat, and of course when you over wet your paper, it does warp. So I put this underneath a big block after I got it down. Let me get my block. Like that. You put a book on it. You can flip it over and put a book on it. Just anything to get it to sit flat. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we have a piece of cheesecloth, and I'll give you the measurements. It really doesn't matter because you're going to stretch it out, and cheesecloth is inexpensive, but it's a good medium to add to some of your projects if you're so inclined. And I thought it gave an interesting background to this card. So after you've got that put on, you're going to want to stretch out your, and you're going to put it over the top like this. Okay, now to adhere that, I'm going to suggest that you use glue dots. So I'm going to take, they're not going to show, so don't be too concerned about where you put them because you're going to put lots of leaves over the top of this. But just sort of spread it out. It doesn't have to completely cover the whole area. And don't be concerned if you're ripping it seems like you're ripping it. It's going to be just fine. Okay, and I'm going to put one more at the bottom. So maybe one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom to hold it down. Okay, and that'll hold it down. It won't fall off. And that gives you plenty of time and room to add your other elements. So you can pull the extra strings, just toss them. Okay, so let's start putting the design elements on the card. So going back to my card, original card, it's going to lay out something like this. So I'm going to start with the big leaves and of course, you'll have a copy of the photograph to work with as well. That'll be in your kit. So let's get started. So I'm going to place the leaves that are in the background first. So I'm going to take a couple of these and maybe put them down here. And so when you're putting them on top of the cheesecloth, it's okay to use more of the glue dots, or you can use glue. So I think what I'm going to do is use glue, and but you can choose whatever you like. So I'm just going to get started by starting to lay them out where I think they should be to proceed. So I don't worry too much about the stems because you're not going to see them at all. So this will just give you an idea. And I only put glue on the bottom part. You really don't need, these can be loose. They actually look nicer when they're loose. So under this one, I'm going to put one of these, probably down like that. So let's put this, some glue on the bottom of there. I'm going to glue this one down here. Maybe move this one up like that. You don't have to fuss with it too much, but a little bit. And then I'm going to take one of the feathers and I'm going to slip it in here. Okay, so I would take a bone folder and curl your feather. You could do it like this. And then just put the glue on the downside so that you can glue it down. So let's see, let's put that right about there. Okay. So there's the top of the card so far. Now let's take one of these leaves and we'll put it over here. And so I really don't want all of this at the bottom, so I'm going to take a pair of scissors and cut it down a little bit. I'm going to cut it down to about 2/3 and place that right about here. Okay, and again, just put glue on the bottom. You don't have to worry about all this in the center. It's all going to be kind of covered so that you don't see any of that. Then I'm going to take one of these. Now on my original card, I did have some different leaves, but these were very difficult to cut out. So I decided to use a new set that I have for this card. So those will be the ones that we'll be using. Okay, I'll put that there. And then I'm going to take one of these leaves and I'm going to cut the stem off. And I'm going to slip him under here. I might just cut most of the leaf off, I think, because I want him to go under here. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so we can put him down there. I'm going to wait for him till I put the sentiment on. So let's move over to the left side of the top of the card. And for that one, I'm going to start with a couple of these. And I'm going to kind of fan them out a little bit. And I'm going to put them right here. So let's just put some glue on these. And kind of, like I said, fan them out a little bit. Let's see, let's offset them like this. And put them right about there. All right. Then let's take another one of these, what I'm going to call pussy willows. I just thought they looked nice with a little tip on them there. And we'll put that up over here. Okay. Now to cover this area, we're going to use some of the little flowers. Some we'll use a large one and then some of the smaller ones. And I'm just going to put a dab of glue in the center of the flower and place it down. And I'm going to take a smaller one and put it up here. And another smaller one and put it down right about here. Okay, so there we have 3 flowers. All right, now next let's see how our sentiment. I have Happy Birthday, and this is stamped in gray granite because that's the color we're using. And I want to put this down right about here, and I'm going to do that on dimensionals. Let's get some dimensionals out here. And I'm going to go ahead, and you can tell I've used both sides of this paper. That happens. I did these in the Stamparatus and didn't get it quite right the first time. Okay, so put a half one there and the other half over here. All right, so we have dimensionals on there. Take off the backing. My fingers are nice and green and brown. That's Sophie. She's dreaming. Okay, so I'm going to slip this underneath the edge of that leaf and have it come over to the edge here. And now we're going to build the rest of the card around that. We have the top half already done, and we're in pretty good shape here. So let's move right along, and I hope that's straight. It looks a little bit low there. Okay, I think that looks better. Okay, so now let's finish up with the card. So I wanted to put this one here so that it comes over the top edge of the, about like that. So I'm going to clip off some more of this. We don't need that to be that long. So put a little glue on it and stick it under here. This is basically just a building process, a layering process, and putting the colors where you want them. So there's no rhyme or real reason to do it in any particular way, except this is how I do it. Okay, then I'm going to take my butterfly and I'm going to press on each side of his body so that it gives him a little bit of a bulge there in the center, and that's where I'm going to put my glue. And I'm going to put him right on the edge of the sentiment tag. And let me get a thing to press that down here, just so that the glue takes effect. Okay, so there's our butterfly. And this is a little loose in here, so I'm going to take another one of those flowers, and I'm going to put it right up here, like that. Okay, so moving along, let's put some more of these leaves in. I'm going to clip this off, put some glue on the back, and put this underneath the edge of this one here. I'll take this one, and I'm going to put it underneath here. Right about like that. Okay. So you can see what I mean when I say that don't be worried about the background, because you're going to see very little of it, but you can see that there is some design back there. Loose design, but it's design nonetheless. Okay, so I'll pick up the edge of that a little bit. So let's take this one and we're going to put it down here. So I'm going to actually cut part of that off as well. Put the glue on. I'm going to stick it right under here. Okay, but underneath that, I'm going to put another one of these leaves. I'm going to also cut that stem off. Put your glue down. I'm going to stick it down here like that. Now this leaf, I'm just going to kind of curl it up. Work a little. Don't be afraid to work some texture into your leaves. Okay. And then I'm going to take this one. Probably going to do the same thing. Trim it off. Put on some glue. I'm going to put this one right over here. Like that. Alright, and this one, before I glued that down, I should have put this under here. Here we go. And even under that, I'm going to put this one. I'm going to stick it underneath these two. I'm going to pull them up and stick it down like that. Okay, and I'm going to take one of my feathers. I'm going to stick it down here underneath here. Like that. Okay, so it's coming right along. So what do we have left here? Let's see. Let's take this one. Let's put it under here. And we have the one that we painted. I'm going to stick it down under this leaf here in the corner. Like that. Okay, so we have a few items left. Let's see, where can we put these? Let's stick this one over here and put the feather. Let me redo the feather a little bit. We'll put the feather put the feather right there. Alright, so now we have a bunch of little flowers to fill in different areas that look a little unfinished. So let's see. Let's put some of these down here. Put one there. And I'm going to put one up here. And let's make this a threesome here. You'll notice I also stamped on the back of some other used paper. Waste not. Okay, so 3 little flowers there, our flowers under the butterfly. And we have a couple more. Let's put one down here at the bottom. And one more. Let's see, should we put it here or up here? Let's put it up at the top. Here at the top. All right. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. I think it looks pretty good. So there you have the finished product, and we can compare that to the original one that I made. This particular butterfly, I didn't reproduce it because you have to hand cut it. I didn't want to hand cut the butterflies. This one I happen to have a die for, and I liked the design better. It looked, I just like it. It's prettier. But this one is more watercolor effect. So there's the second card. Okay, so I hope you liked playing with us today. I always think it's a lot of fun to make something a little bit different and to get a little bit inky. So there's my card for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a lovely day.